Well, we are glad to see you tonight. It's time. It's Wednesday. It's time for Life Talk. And we're going to have a good one tonight, as you can see from your screen. The Me I Want to Be, Becoming God's Best Version of Me. And it's a study through a portion of the book of Colossians. If you have a Bible available to you, we encourage you to reach and grab that, have that at hand. Also, we encourage you to get a copy of our study guide. You can get that on our website. And all those discussion questions we're going to be going through as a group tonight are on there. You can use that as would work for you. Before we do anything else, let's get everybody in here. How's everybody? Hi, everybody.
Hey. How we doing?
So I have been absent for 2 weeks, and I appreciate the flexibility. We have 4 slots, and there's 5 of us who do this regularly. So Adam is bumped off tonight. So hopefully he's having a good restful evening. Maybe he'll jump on, and if he's available to chat with us or leave a comment. Which leads me to the first thing I want to remind everybody about is we would love to have your comments. If you're watching on Facebook, watching on YouTube, you can just put a comment there. We will see that immediately. We can share that with everybody else watching right there at the bottom of the screen. So a comment, question. If nothing else, just say hi. We're watching. We would really appreciate that. That's a great encouragement to us, and we would look forward to that. So it looks like we're all in our personal spaces. I'm in my home. Lisa's in hers. Kayla, looking good, very decorative there behind you. You gave your background some thought, didn't you?
No, this would be my dad's office.
Oh, you're in your dad's office. Okay, yeah. Your dad gave some nice thought. And Joe's in his wonderful Charleston abode there. So welcome everybody.
Good to be here.
Yes, good to be here.
So we're ready to jump in. We need to. I will tell you this one little story. We were with our grandchildren watching our 3 grandchildren that live in Lynchburg, Brandon and Heather's 3 children, basically while baby number 4 arrived, and it did last this last weekend, and we got to be there for that, and then we come back to Charleston. But we're putting the kids to bed, and of course, they're restless, and when you become an adult, you want to go to bed and can't. When you're a child, you have to go to bed and you don't want to. That's the way that works. And so I told them, I said, here's the rules, guys. No squawking. No talking, no balking. So I only say that to say this. We don't want too much squawking. We want to stay on target. So, Joe, we're going to bring you up, and you're going to jump us right into our scripture passage for tonight.
All right. Well, tell you what, this evening we're going to be in Colossians. Maybe just a little bit of a controversial passage. It deals with relationships, both family relationships, work relationships. And relationships, it's been my experience, always have a tendency to be a little bit messy sometimes. And so let me get everybody on the same page. And Lisa, if you can pull up our scripture, we're going to be starting in Colossians 3, starting in verse 18. Here's how it starts. Wives, submit yourselves to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. Slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything, and do it not only when their eye is on you and to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence for the Lord. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Anyone who does wrong will be repaid for their wrongs, and there is no favoritism. Masters, provide your slaves with what is right and fair, because you know that you also have a master in heaven. All right, that gives us a good background for our as far as what we're going to be discussing this evening. But I would like to kick us off with something maybe a little more lighthearted. We've been talking about this before we came on this evening. Television shows, television families. The question this evening is, what TV show would best represent your family? And Lisa's already laughing. So Lisa, I mean, if you're going to be giggling at the beginning, I've got to pass it over to you.
Well, I'm only giggling because there's so many. I guess it depends on what stage of life we're in or what day of the week it is. But actually, I guess for us, if I'm talking about TV shows that would best represent our family, it's back from the 1980s, Family Ties. I know Kayla won't remember it, but some of you will. I actually feel like it represents our family just in the title of the series, which is Family Ties. So,
Good deal.
yeah.
That's a good one.
All right.
It's
Kayla,
the one you're getting.
Have you been thinking about this as well?
Yeah, okay. Well, here's my problem. The first thing that came to mind whenever I read this was instantly I wanted to say Full House because that was my favorite show growing up. They were just like, so it doesn't necessarily represent our family, but the closeness of the family does, and how, you know, everyone, you know, does everything together basically. So I'm going to go with that because that's my favorite. So that's what I want it to be.
There you go.
Now I want to time out here just a second because we see you watching. We see there's people online. We want some of you out there to tell us how you would answer this question. Okay, so
That's a great question.
So let's get some feedback. Let's get those comments coming in. Okay, Joe, why don't you tell us what's on your mind on this particular question?
Well, you know, I thought about this, and I had a lot of fun, like Kayla, I had a lot of fond memories in relation to one show. Now, you got to remember, I'm the senior of the people here on the screen this evening. And mine is the Andy Griffith Show. Now, that's not because our family was kind of idyllic and we lived in Mayberry and all, you know, it wasn't really like that so much. But the values they displayed on that show, I grew up in a period when those kind of values were what was, you know, appreciated. You know, there's a lot of emphasis on patriotism and, you know, the law and, you know, being kind to one another. And but I think that one is the one that I thought of the most. My father really didn't allow himself very many luxuries in life, but the one thing he allowed himself to do on Monday nights was the church bowling. And he went bowling every Monday night. And when he went bowling, Mom cracked open some Pepsis, and we kicked back and watched the Andrew Griffith Show. And I love that. That's the memory I have for that.
Wow.
That's
That's excellent. That's not what I expected. I thought we just zoom into. Well, I have two, and it just kind of depends on what period and what happened to be going on at the moment. One was the Waltons because it was that idea that, you know, everybody seemed to pull for each other, love each other. If anyone got cranky, it wasn't serious. You know, it'd get resolved. And then there was those moments when it felt like the Twilight Zone, you know, and we've all had those experiences with children or people in your life, and it just where things got bizarre and got weird and that sort of thing. So, I see Patsy agrees with me. The Waltons, however, the Waltons were far richer than my family. So, yeah, we just were by. Actually, it's not far from. It's just south of Charlottesville, where Earl Hamner grew up, and they have the Waltons Mountain Museum there, which is kind of, even though the show was filmed in California, it was based on, you know, rural Virginia, that sort of thing. Thank you, Patsy. Appreciate that very much. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Pam says, show Christy family. I might pick Life Goes On for at least some of it for a while. Life Goes On, yeah. Christy was the one. Wasn't that one where she was a school teacher and somewhere in rural, like out in the rural Tennessee hills or something?
No, this one's a more recent. Now, Pam, if I'm wrong, you correct me by letting me know. But I think this is a more current series. Okay. Christy, I think it stars Dreyfus. I can't remember her name, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I think that's the show.
Every show should have a unique name, so we're not confused on LifeTalk.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, all right. If we get any more of those comments in, we'll bring them on screen. We can come back around, circle back around to that. Okay, so let's get to our Bible study tonight. And by the way, this passage sounds very familiar. It sounds sort of familiar. It's very similar to what Paul wrote in Ephesians 5, which we just looked at a few weeks ago when we were still in our Ephesians series. By the way, I'll just take a little bit of a little bit of a commercial time. We're starting a new series Sunday called Angels, Agents of God, Agents of Good. And I couldn't be more excited to share some things with you. And I think you're going to be really blessed. And I think you're going to be amazed how much from what we learned of angels, though, can help us in our lives today. So that'll be kicking off Sunday online and obviously in our 3 in-person worship services Sunday. Now, back to this one. Let's get Joe, are you going to lead it? Who's going to do the questions from here on out?
I'll start it. I'll do the questions.
Okay.
Okay, so first question is, what do you think are some of the reasons for the breakdown of marriage and family in our society? So heavy question coming in hot right off the bat.
That is. Well, let me start with a couple thoughts. I think one thing is that our society today looks at marriage differently, especially differently than our parents looked at marriage. I think there's a lot less commitment in relation to marriage. You know, when I was growing up, my parents, there would have been a shame associated with divorce. And that, I think, is just almost totally gone. People enter marriage now with the concept that, you know, I'll try it. If it doesn't work out, I can always get divorced, you know, or I'll marry this person. And if they aren't what I think they should be or what I'm hoping they'll be, then that's fine. I'll just divorce them and marry someone else. So I think part of it is that I think that they just have a lot less commitment in the beginning to it. And I think that's a shame. I really do. I think they're missing a blessing for lack of a commitment.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that came to my mind, and this is actually going to tie in like later on, like around like question 4, but just that many people don't want to work at it. They want it to be easy. So when they come to when they get married, they expect it to be like this happily ever after. You know, even if you have like little bumps in the road, it's okay. You know, you're with your partner for life. You know, this is going to be great. Everything's going to be fine. And it's not like that. It's a lot harder. You have to work at it. You have to work at being a good spouse, at being a good parent, because we are imperfect. So I think that whenever it gets hard, that's when a lot of times people are like, I'm done. And then they want to go find the next easy thing to pursue, the next thing that they think is going to be easy at least.
And when we were kind of talking about TV shows, just kind of Reba, and it's really funny, but really the whole premise of the show is that she and her husband got divorced, and the husband and the new wife live really close, and they're like such a part of Reba's family, and now they're this one big happy family. I mean, Reba's even best friends with the new wife. But yeah, I think we've made it to where it's just so easy, kind of like what Kayla was saying. There's no work for it, and it's almost like I don't know, kind of like oh, but it's all fine. It all just works out, and we'll all still be friends, so it'll all be good. But most of the time, things aren't like TV shows, and it's not as easy to mix families. And I know this happens, and no judgment, because things happen in life, and there are divorce and things happen, but there's really no easy divorce as far as it's easy for the kids and good for the kids, or we're all just going to be friends.
Yeah. This question we could spend all of our time plus a bunch of other time looking at. One of the things I think historically, you go back to the early days of America. You think of a family putting everything they own in a Conestoga wagon and heading across the plains, knowing they may make it, they may die. They may starve to death. They may break down and they're just stranded. But there was this commitment and hard work, all for the thought of, I want my children to have a better life than I did. And I know I've heard even my own father say, he worked hard to have a better life. His children have a better life than he did. I've done that as well. But at some point you reach such a level of affluence, and most of us maybe don't feel rich. But if you travel around the world to most countries, it's almost, sometimes you feel shameful how much you have. We joke about first world problems. Well, we're not worrying about if we have a few scraps of food to feed our kids and, maybe a leaky roof over our head, and, that's as good as we can do. But I think the affluence kind of doubles back on, we have an expectation. We should have everything. Everything should work. If everything doesn't work for me, I'm dissatisfied. And I think affluence in our society has worked against us in many ways. And obviously just a general decay of spiritual interest. And Satan is attacking. He attacks all institutions. He attacks, the respect for human government, which is something God established. The church, and then marriage itself, the family itself. It's no wonder it's under attack because it's part of God's perfect plan for us. So that's a few stray thoughts.
And, if you think about it, something that's changed, here, however long Facebook and all this has been around, is you get these glimpses into other people's lives and how perfect other people's lives are and how amazing their spouse treats them, or they post all this nice stuff about their spouse. Why does my spouse never do that? So you get this comparison, and that really, it makes it difficult to try to stay like happy where you're at. I mean, because when you see someone else being like extremely happy, having all sorts of new stuff, all sorts of like just great family trips, like they get to travel, and you're just sitting there and you're like, I don't get that. I should be with someone else who does have that and give me that. So a lot of this comparison, it can really damage. It can be that breakdown of the marriage and the family. But I know that Facebook, it's not always what it seems to be. I read somewhere, and I cannot remember where it was, but someone had posted this on Facebook, and it said, sometimes the grass is greener on the other side because it's fake. And that was just eye-opening. That very well could be. It's something you can put their best foot forward.
And sometimes it's greener on the other side of the fence because the sewage is backed up.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Anyway, if you go back to the passage for just a moment, you might even want to bring these up, Lisa, if you can. But
okay.
We live in an age where there is no sense of personal responsibility, or a lessening of sense of personal responsibility. But if you look at the passage, wives, you have responsibility. There it is, to your husband. And then husbands, here's your responsibility: to love your wives, do not be harsh to them. And it goes on to children. Here's your responsibility. Fathers, do not, to the children's responsibility to the parents' responsibility to children. It's all about, here's your role. Here's what God asks you to do. And I think the fact that he mentions submission, he mentions love, obedience, and not provoking your children, not to discourage them, but rather to encourage them. I think those are clues for us that those are the general problem areas with each of those categories, or at least highly probable, highly possible. So, it's everybody else's fault. It's their fault. It's society's fault. It's whatever's fault. It's, the perfect people on Instagram's fault. It's whatever, So I think this passage, among others, is all about, here's your role. This is what you do. So we need to take those roles, and no squawking, no talking, no balking. Okay, that's what we're doing.
Well, while we have a second, here, Gail chimed in that the TV show Green Acres, because it always had animals. I think I might be with her on this. I should have thought about that.
And I talked as a real animal lover. I know that for a fact. So that seems very appropriate comment from her. Thanks, Gail.
All right. Well, I can move us on to question number 2. And so question 2 is, what are some examples of the negative connotations associated with the word submit?
I'll take the first stab at this one.
Go for it.
And this is the misconception. We view submission as being in a position of lesser value. That's the negative connotation. That is not at all the reality. It's just the role that God has. God knew there needed to be arrangement and order. This is how he set it up. It's not a question of value. It's just a question of roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was telling Joe and Kayla earlier before we went live, Chris and I got into a really good discussion at dinner because, okay, and you feel free to correct me, Jess, if you need to. I think that first verse that we read has been taken out of context so many times and used as a negative that it does sound like a form of weakness, the way, because it's not used in parallel to the verse right under it, where it's like, wives, submit yourself to your husbands, which is as fitting in the Lord. But it's like lots of times that second part gets left out. And of course, you know, I'm a woman on the panel here, so I see it differently. I mean, that can be it's very harsh when it's like that, if you don't use it in parallel to the next verse. And I think with that, the negative connotations is, you know, domestic abuse comes from that sometimes too. So again, we're talking about the negative. I mean, I know that there's a positive and there's an order and how it should be set up and stuff. But I think that's why, to me, sometimes when I hear the word submit, it does bring in some negative thoughts.
Yep.
So
I think that point's a good one, and I think it's good to kind of back up and get some context in a variety of things. I was started looking at this in relation to Romans 13:1. The first verse of chapter 13 said, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God." So essentially, we need to understand that authority was established by God and that we are all under a variety of different kinds of authority. First of all, it's not just wives and husbands. There's a litany of authority. Romans 1:1, Paul, it says that Paul, a servant or a bondservant of Christ Jesus, called to be an apostle, set apart for the gospel of Christ. Paul lots of times referred to himself as a slave or a bondservant. Christ, in John chapter 6, verse 38, "For I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me." You know, we need to understand that we are all subject to authorities. We're all subject to different types of individuals as far as who we are responsible to. So it's not just wives, it's not just husbands. It's every organization has authority as part of it.
mm-hmm.
I think this just shows how important it is, women, how important it is that you choose a godly husband, that you choose a godly man. Before you get married, you have to know, does he love the Lord, most importantly. And then the same thing for men, that they're choosing a godly wife. Because I feel like this verse doesn't work if God's not a part of it, you know, because again, it comes back to the whole what Lisa was talking about, how it's just this negative, it's just this nasty word that we hear now that women will hear and be like, I'm not doing that. And if they're thinking that, maybe they haven't chosen the right spouse.
And I think actually when Paul wrote this, remember the time that we were in, or that he was writing it in, and women and children and slaves, they were considered lesser humans, if human at all. So again, I love this because it's like, you know, Jesus came on the scene and he changed everything. And that's why the gospel is so amazing, because actually, instead of the word submit being weak, it is very empowering in the fact that that's how relationships work. It's not that you take that your power is taken. Actually, the submission is that you are giving. You are giving that. And but yeah, I think sometimes, you know, we forget that, at least I do, that it can sound negative at first, you know, but when we look back, this was really kind of a game changer, the way that he was writing and speaking, because this isn't the way people were treated. You know, nobody else was standing in the background waving the flag saying, love your wives and treat them good and treat your children good and don't cause them to hate you and don't cause them, or slaves, be mean to your slaves. They're like cheering them on, saying, be good to your slaves, help them to make good decisions, and you make decisions thinking about how it will affect them. So it really is a game changer from what was happening, there, from the empire and stuff, from the Roman Empire and everything. So, sorry.
That was a great summary and great reality. People, they say, well, the Bible is, anti this and anti them, but it really was pro worth of humans because we're made in the image of God. If you want to take it all the way back, it goes all the way back to the beginning of chapter 3. for us as a believer, we're motivated by a relationship with Christ. If then you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on things of the earth. So, you know, I love how you said this is not about, you know, surrendering power. It's about giving, you know, into the relationship. And, you know, it's like, I don't understand how a lot of things work. You know, like there's lights on, lighting up so you can see me on this camera. I don't understand how power generation and transmission and resistance and, you know, the concept of energy flowing through a copper wire all this distance. I mean, it's sort of, I know there's some of you out there that are electrical engineers are saying, you know, you don't get it. But you know what? I do know this. If I go over and flip that switch, generally the light's going to come on, and that's a good thing. So even though you don't understand how this works, God knows how relationships work and how family works. You know, tap into that.
Yep.
There you go.
Exactly. All right. Well, any last thoughts on that? And again, please send us your comments. We want to hear your thoughts on all these questions as well. But if we are done with that one, let's move on to question number 3. And that is, apart from the obvious, why is it important that a child learn obedience?
I have a secondary question. What is the obvious? Maybe we ought to say the obvious.
I thought about that too. I questioned that myself.
Yeah.
I think I actually wrote this question a long time ago, so I'm not sure what I meant by that, but maybe we ought to see if we can figure out what I meant by that.
First part. Why is it important that a child learn obedience?
Let's go with that.
All right.
Obvious reasons, I guess, maybe would be their own safety. You know?
Oh, good choice.
Yeah, that in itself, you know, for their safety, we have rules.
You don't play in the street.
Yeah,
Yes.
Don't run in the middle of the street when a car is coming. It makes sense. It's for your safety.
Keep your
For me,
seatbelt
what I
fastened.
thought was, if you don't teach them obedience as a child, you know, you're never going to be able to teach them as an adult to obey and follow rules or instructions. So kind of important that you start that from the get-go.
That's a good point. I think that obedience is just a fundamental life skill that you need to succeed at anything. You know, if I'm going to succeed at work, I've got to be obedient to the powers above to complete the work they tasked me with. If I'm going to be successful in the home, I'm going to need to be obedient there to, you know, try to do the things that God would have me to do as a husband and father. And you know, and if I'm going to be successful as a Christian, I need to be obedient to God's will.
Yeah. When our kids were little, we used to say this a lot. Delayed obedience is disobedience. So you need to obey like the first time. And I would always use it when I would talk to Kayla or Jace or Jaron. It's like, I need you to obey me the first time, even if I tell you just to do something simple like turn the TV off, because I need to know that you're going to obey me when I tell you to stop before you run into the street, or I tell you to stop before you touch the burner up there. But yeah, and I always remember that because I always think about it for myself as well. You know, even when the Lord's dealing with me, that delayed obedience is still disobedience. You know, we need to obey right away. And you know as well as I do, of course, we have a great boss, and I'm not just saying that because he's on screen with us, but everyone in any working environment, you're going to have somebody over you. You're going to have a boss, someone that you have to listen to, you know, even whether you agree with them or not. Sometimes, you know, you still have, like Joe said, I think, you know, rules to follow and stuff. So, and I think we have some comments. Let's see, here we go.
I'll read it. Pam says, the frontal cortex of the brain, the part that helps in decision-making, isn't fully formed. We need help as we are younger to learn what is right and wrong before we can discern it for ourselves. Like, God had all this in plan. When he made us, he knew how our brain would form. And this is why, you know, you have parents.
He knew we needed parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then Patsy says, in this context, obedience equals respect.
Oh,
Yeah.
Good point.
Yep.
I guess I would just add to the, go ahead, Joe.
I'm sorry, going back to what Lisa said, we have some friends that taught their children this thing with their hands. I think I've said this before. but I still love it, you know. So in the example that Lisa said, where a parent makes a request, here's what they taught their children to do. Yes, mom or dad, I'll obey right away, all the way, with a happy heart. And, you know, I think I kind of like that. I'll obey. Not only will I obey, but I'll, you know, I'm not going to just take the garbage out and set it beside the can. You know, that's not all the way. Right away, you know, not as soon as the TV show is over with, you know, and just all this concept of doing it and showing the right attitude with a happy heart. I really like that concept.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I had a thought. I'm not sure I still have that thought. Oh, I know what it was. You know, I love what Joe said there a minute ago, actually, in his previous comment about a basic life skill. Because if you learn that as a skill to be obedient, it's probably more likely as that child grows in an understanding that there is a God who made me, a God to whom I'm responsible, who ultimately has my eternal destiny in his hand, then I would be more inclined to be obedient to him. And, you know, there's a lot of talk about our conception of the Heavenly Father comes from the earthly Father that God has given us. And that's a weighty responsibility for us as fathers. And then you think of all the families where it's dysfunctional or difficult, or you know, where where the father is absent or whatever, how disruptive that is. But it sets the course for the future. And I love what Patsy said in this context. It equals obedience. Obedience equals respect.
Yeah. And again, it kind of like goes on top of each other. If we don't learn, like if I didn't learn obedience as a child, I grew up and I had kids of my own, I can't be an example then to them. So it's going to be just that continual like snowball effect where it just gets worse and worse and worse as it goes on. But it's it's just a life skill that no matter what age you're at, you have to have. So start it young, start right away. I'm having a tough time with my 3-year-old. Let me tell you, she loves to push my buttons. We're working on the whole doing it right away thing. Whenever I ask her to do something, we're not grasping it quite yet. We're getting there.
Gotcha. Okay, I think we're ready to switch to the next question, and I think it's about work, because he gets in. And of course, it's slaves and slave owners. That's bizarre to our thinking. We know it was a historical reality, but we can bring this into our work life. So let's go with that.
So question number 4 is, what are some different attitudes that our society has towards work? And there's 2 parts to it afterwards, which is, what is the main motivation for work according to this passage, and how will this attitude affect the way you work? But we can start with the first part right away. What are some different attitudes that our society has towards work? And boy, oh boy, are there many answers.
Well, mine will be positive. I'm sorry. So I can start. Some people have a habit to overdo it, like they work too much. That's all they want to do is work. Because I don't know if any of you were thinking negative, or because I guess there is some negative to it. Probably like they want to avoid it, and that's probably the opposite side of it. But some people they overwork. That's what they just work so much.
That is true.
Good point. And,
right
I
away
think
I went for the negative.
Yeah. What's that?
Right away I went for the negative.
I did too. I feel chastised for that thinking now after.
Sorry.
So, I was just thinking of our, it's easy to fall. I think maybe men do this more. I don't know. I could be wrong in that, but we view our worth and our value with what we do, how much we earn, the
Yes.
job we have, are we climbing the ladder? When ultimately our value is because God made us and Christ loves us unconditionally. That's it. And, so some of the attitude is, I'm going to prove my worth. I'm going to be valuable. I'm going to make something of myself. And there's nothing wrong with godly ambition as long as it's tied back to the motivation. We'll get that in the second part of this question here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, I went for the negative in that I feel like in society now, it just seems like, especially right now, if you notice, there's everywhere it's like hiring right now. It's like no one wants to seem just go out and work, and it's frustrating. And yeah, so that's immediately where my mind went, was just that. And again, like I went with question 1, if it's too much work to work into your marriage or to work into your family, you just don't do it. Just give up. But it's the same thing now. You know, when a job gets too hard, you just quit and find a new one. I don't know. That's what I see a lot of. But maybe we should stick with the more positive. So.
Yeah,
Joe,
I find it ironic
positive or negative?
I find it ironic that people who put work as a primary factor in their life, you know, one of the things that you soon learn once you've been at work is there's always a price to be paid for climbing the ladder. You know, you have to sacrifice your time. You have to sacrifice some of your opportunities for, you know, to enjoy life or spend time with your family. And I'm not saying those are all wrong. There's always a balance, of course. But I think lots of people just assume that if I have a better position and I can buy a better car or a better house, and, you know, I've got a better title, then that's successful. But there's a price for that success. I one time heard that something to the effect of salaries even are based to some degree on how much risk you're willing to take with your life in relation to work. I remember talking to a guy who was in a senior managed position just a few years ago. And we were just kind of talking about how he got to that position. And he said, well, first of all, let me remind you, it's cost me 2 wives. You know, and I just thought, wow, what a price for alleged success.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Second part of the question: what's the main motivation for working this passage? And this will correct all the negatives that we brought up in the first part of the question.
Yeah.
So, someone want to take a stab at it right from the text?
Very simple. Do it for the Lord, not for men.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In everything you do, even the little things. That's what's sometimes even difficult for me to remember, even just in the little things. The housework, I feel like we've talked about this recently, was my horrible attitude towards doing the dishes and doing the housework sometimes. But if I would just do everything as if I'm doing it for the Lord, which I am, you know, that would just change my whole mindset. It would change my attitude completely about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and kind of like what we were talking about, how society looks at our work and our motivation. I think a lot of people, like, I think this has been said, we get our worth. I think that's what Joe was saying, our worth from what we do and our job. And I think sometimes stay-home moms get like a bad rep because it's like, well, they're just home with their kids. But I love this quote that I heard, but this also goes for, you know, working moms and dads and stay-home moms and dads, that sometimes, you know, our greatest contribution to the kingdom of God may not be something we do in our job, but it's in someone you raise. And that, I think, to me, that has to be, as a parent, your most important job. No matter if you're climbing that corporate ladder or what, if you've sacrificed your family on the way up, what have you gained?
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I mean, I think so many of these problems would be solved if that was the number one goal, that we just saw how important it is to do the job of loving our husband and our wife and our children as if we're doing it for the Lord. And just things I think would be so much better if we could just do that.
Yeah.
You're muted, Jess.
Always unmuted at least once per night. Sorry. How will this attitude affect the way you work? And you were already alluding to that, Lisa. It just works better. You're going to have that. So let's throw a few more results that we can perceive here as we finish off question 4.
I'm sorry.
Did I zone out on you?
Yeah, I think my computer did something. I think I missed what you last said. I'm sorry.
But we're towards the last one.
A good part of the verse that may help us.
since you know that you will receive an inheritance of the Lord as a reward, it is the Lord Christ you're serving. It was part of the question was, how will having this attitude, as you said, Kayla, about we do it for the Lord, how will this attitude affect us? What's the result? And right here it is. You'll receive an inheritance of the Lord. God's going to bless. You know, and we also, I think, you know, whether you're taking care of family or earning a living or whatever you're doing, this is not the end game. This is not what it's all about. This is not the point. And we have this inheritance out there in the future.
And I think it's important to note, just really quickly, husbands and wives, it's important to remember you are a team. You're not working against each other to see who does the most work, or whose work is more important. If you can work together as a team and you have that mindset of teamwork and not these two separate things, you're going to build even more into your family. And that I've seen a lot of recently too, is just a lot of, I've been at work 8 o'clock this morning to 5 p.m. I've been at work all day doing this. And then you've got the wives at home. Well, I've been with the kids all day long. You know, it's not I do this and you do that. It's we do this together to build our family. And again, when you have the right mindset and that attitude of doing it for the Lord and you're doing it as a team, it changes everything completely.
Yeah, very well. Okay, let's move on to question 5. We're getting short on time, and we'll make sure we cover number 5.
All right, number 5 is Paul points to Christ's lordship in every role and relationship. What are the primary roles, relationships, and spheres of influence you have? If I'm not mistaken, this is more of just like a personal question to ask yourself, figure out what your roles are and then how you can serve the Lord in it.
Yeah, it's a really simple process. Okay, husband, check. Father, check. Workman, yes. Under authority, yes. Check. So there's my responsibilities right there. And in some ways, a parent, a child, although I'm an adult, but my parents are still living. We have some responsibilities in that ongoing responsibility to honor your parents. Yep. Thanks, Patsy, for the comment. Yeah, we're do it right. First time. Good. Go ahead.
And I think in addition to the kind of well-defined, roles that we all think of, the ones that just checked off, there's some other ones that might be a little less obvious. I have an opportunity to influence people that I can minister to. I have an opportunity to influence people that I can help do other things. I have an opportunity to influence people I serve. So, there's all these secondary things where I can really make an impact and a difference in people's lives that aren't maybe the roles that I normally tick off when I'm walking down the list. I mean, everything that Jess said is obviously true. Those are always the case. But I think there's a lot of opportunities that I have to think a little harder on before I can figure out who I might be able to influence.
Okay. Very good. I appreciate the comments. I wish we had time for more. I do want to get to our bottom line tonight, which is sort of the summary. Following God's guidelines influences the impact of others, whatever our roles and responsibilities. And then I appreciate these. Adam has, I think, had a hand in writing these crafts, at least as I think so. Next step. Here's some personal steps that we can make. Make a list of key roles and relationships in your life. Pray about areas you need to put off the old self and put on the new self. Write down how you can please Jesus in those areas. So something about writing things down that just sort of solidifies it, makes it seem more important, or that sort of thing. Need help your role in home society? Reach out to us, and Adam has given us his email number. Or email address. Sound like an old guy right there. What's your email number? So anyway, there's Adam would love to continue the conversation with you. So, Joe,
yes,
for this great evening, and it's our prayer for you that indeed that you will find the best version of yourself as you continue to grow in Christ. Any final words before we sign off?
See everybody on Sunday.
Okay, yeah, gonna have a great day. All right, look forward to it. Seeing you then.